Well, we've got a lot to cover. There's a couple
Yeah.
more stories. I'm going to skip over them for now in the sake of time. We could talk about lots of news for a long time, but we want to get into the economics, the preparing, the crypto, all that other good stuff. Let's lead off with this story here. And this is a graph from the Federal Reserve that just shows the savings rate of people, and it says 4.7%, but you could see that the savings for people back in 2020 when things started to, the stimulus and all that, savings went over 30%. Now we're down below 5% savings, similar to numbers between right before the global financial crisis in 2008. And if you look for more perspective on it, the personal savings rate is between 3 and 5%. So they say that people are not ready for, like, the average family is not ready for a $500 expense that's unexpected. There's no savings. Everybody's getting worried about possible expenses, prices going up, inflation, cost of things, and holding back their currency. Patrick, what's your take on the fact that we don't have savings anymore?
Well, I mean, it's just the reality of where a lot of Americans are at right now. They're having an issue with getting even their basic necessities paid for as costs of inflations continue to rise. So I think for me, it's very simple. You just got to think about where the average consumer is like right now. And it really is a hard place for them to be, right? Their money is going less at the grocery store. It's becoming the de-dollarization all over is happening globally. So what we're seeing is it's just going further in a little bit of places that they want you to see, right? And they try to mix it in the CPI by letting you know that inflation's not as bad as it is if you don't include things like rent or your mortgage or gasoline. But in reality, like, Americans are struggling. And as they start taking away these handouts, right, it's going to lead to handcuffs because now they've got control. They have conditioned you to be ready for them supporting you for everything that you need. And they want the government to be the answer. So to me, it is a sad reality of that's where we're at. And there is only one way to get out of it. And in my opinion, it's just one way, really. It's hard work, right? You have to work hard to get out of a situation that you're in. And that might be by gardening at home, saving some costs, maybe finding a way to contribute and make some money on the side. You heard Dan from I Allegedly. He brought up a couple of great ideas. You can go out to make, some side hustle money. Ninja talks about it. You can look at him on his courses. He talks about it there. So many opportunities. But the reality is it is affecting our communities and we got to do something about it. So I think that's why we're all here, though. That's why we're on Ninja Nation. We talk about this stuff. We talk with each other. We're ready to be here for each other. We want to help each other, and we want to learn and grow together. So that's the solution here is, like, again, you guys hear me every show. I'll look at you in the eye and I'll say, if you're listening today and you choose to do nothing different, then there's no reason for you to be watching us because we add no value to your life. You need to actually make a change after you hear this stuff and you start putting pieces together. It's your job to do your own research, to take it to the next step, but it'll also be like more global thinking, right? What are we going to do for our neighbors and our community when stuff hits the fan? How are we ready to support our neighbors? Are we ready to support? Or are you really going to let the neighbor kids down the block go without food and you're going to eat like kings?
Yeah, and it's not just global, but it's local too. But let's turn over to our financial prepper here, and Chris, and see what his take is on savings. How are you telling your community, which is growing by leaps and bounds? Congratulations on that. But we need to grow even more. How are you telling them to preserve their wealth? Are they holding cash? Are they holding? We'll get to crypto in a minute, but cash, silver, crypto. What's your take on the savings rate, and what's the best way to be prepared financially?
Well, we're in a time where, savings are going down because people are having to spend more, right? Discretionary spending is being cut out. I had a story last night about a lady that went to trade her car in, and the car people that she traded it into didn't pay the note. So the bank came after her somehow. Does that mean the car company's insolvent? I don't know. The repos are up as bad as they were in the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis in 2008, 2009 is when it's as bad as it was then. People are hurting for money. I mean, that's why it is so important to find a side hustle, find a revenue stream. If you think that you're going to buy gold, silver, and Bitcoin and then just sit and just do nothing else, you're absolutely wrong. The wealthy have things that pay them to own them, and then they turn that into silver, gold, Bitcoin, assets that kind of hold wealth. But if you don't really have any wealth, you probably need to be thinking about saving food, getting out of debt. That's the number one thing everybody needs to do right now is get out of debt. If you're not part of the problem, you'll be able to be part of the how we fix this thing. The people that are going to build this thing back. If you're broke, you can help nobody. Really, money actually helps people. Yeah. Money's not everything. I get it. The love of money, is the root of all evil, and that's the truth. But good luck helping somebody without it. That's why it's important to take those steps now, so you can prosper later. And getting out of debt's the first thing. I say that in a lot of my videos because I think that's the most important. And I know a lot of my subscribers are well off. They're diversified. They have 10 to 50% in precious metals, to hedge against inflation or anything that might happen. The lights go out, who knows? Yeah. We've never been so close to the Third World War, in my opinion. Since I've been on the earth, this is the closest we've ever been. And it doesn't look like it's going to get rosy tomorrow. So that's a really good reason. See, these assets that we talk about do really good in this environment. In a volatile environment where uncertainty is present, that's when our assets perform. And that is exactly what's been going on since I started making videos about the crash, the stock market crash, that is, when Jeff Bezos came out, Elon Musk, they said, hey, we're selling our stock. I made a huge video about it. It's like 7 huge companies sold a ton of their stock. And everybody's like, oh, but they're just, they're selling out for this. I said, no, they're selling early. These people that own large portions of companies have to sell early. And that was a bellwether. And I encourage people to maybe I don't want to ever tell anybody what to do, because as soon as I do, I'll be wrong. But I tried to encourage people to move over into precious metals and Bitcoin. If you're in that camp and you understand it, and that's what this show's about. And I think you guys are going to do a really good job with that. But that was a prime opportunity, and now these assets have actually held their value. Bitcoin's on its way back. That's why I say 1%, because I think we've got a crazy downturn coming for Bitcoin. But I think it will be one of those assets that has the biggest asymmetric move, even more than gold. But I hope that covered the savings and why we save it.
That's a great take. And let me transition over to Dylan here to close out the topic. And to touch on what you said, Chris. Like, money is the root of all evil, but it does pave the road and make it a little easier towards happiness and getting there. So you don't want it to be your entire life, but it does make things easier. So Dylan, I know you have a community as well that you're helping get into the crypto world, which we're going to talk about next, but how are you recommending people to weather the storm through cash savings, precious metals, silver and gold? I know you're relatively new to that, but obviously it's an emerging category and Patrick's getting big into it. But precious metals, crypto, cash, what's your general recipe? And I know this is not financial advice, but what's your general take on those 3 categories?
Yeah, so if you're going to save, like Chris mentioned before, you need to create a revenue stream. And once you do that, like once you have the revenue to pay for your daily expenses and everything, and then everything else you earn is excess. And if you're talking about saving, you got to start putting it in different vehicles, in different asset classes that aren't correlated to where you're getting your money from, right? So if you're making money and then you're saving in the dollar, well, if anything happens to the dollar, all that money's gone. Right? We see examples like this in places like Venezuela, Colombia, Argentina, any place that Turkey that's had a currency collapse. People work their whole life, had a successful business, right? That's one asset there, right? Say they were a doctor, right? And they're making money from that, and then they save by reinvesting in their business, creating more cash flow. But that cash flow fails, right? If the value of that cash goes down, it'll never keep up with a super high inflation. So buying something like gold or silver or Bitcoin or real estate, having something like that to protect against that potential loss of value or collapse is key. And so when I tell people about that, I said, that's something you need to consider, right? You need to be really clear what your goals are, what your situation is, what the assets are that you're investing in, what the purpose is of that as well. And when I talk to people about Bitcoin, like Chris mentioned, 1%, I think that's a great starting point, right? You're off zero. You have 1% is not going to kill anyone. When it comes to having an allocation of that, worst case, it goes to zero. Okay. You still have 99% left. But best case, right? And this would be in the case of a disaster, most of the other assets and things you own might all be correlated, might be a part of a system that might collapse. And if that happens, right, especially if you're holding the rest in cash or bonds or things like that, if that all collapses, right, you're screwed. So, but if you had that 1% in Bitcoin and that 100x in value, you're just as well off, if not better off, than you were before. So that's something to think about. And then, of course, as you learn more about it, and you can gain more conviction for or against whatever asset you're looking into. So whether it's Bitcoin, gold, silver, real estate, whatever it is, that'd be kind of where I'd say start and start thinking about how you're going to go about saving.
Let me talk about the 1% just for a second. I'll be quick, I promise. The 1% thing. Did anybody ever buy all their gold at one time? Or, no, most people buy just a little bit, and then they learn how to put it on their phone and get it on a whole hard wallet. And I would even recommend taking the 1% off, put it back on the hard, take it off, kind of play with it and get familiar with using it, how it works. Maybe even buy a little something with it. You need to learn and figure out how it works. If you're not really into that and you just want to hold your wealth, I know, Patrick, you can give them that. What do you call it?
These guys?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The ballet wallets. Yeah. So for us, it's real simple. They're just nice.
It's just cold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real simple. They're under $50. And so what it does is it allows you to store any crypto you want. And the beauty of the ballet wallet is the only way that you can actually spend the coins that you accumulate on this card is if you scratch off this little phrase here, the passphrase, and you have to peel off the QR code here and scan the private key. So I had a client call me the other day and said, man, I think my phone got hacked. I just want to make sure that like my crypto's safe. And I asked him one question. I said, have you ever scratched off the private key? He said, no. I said, then there's no way even you could have spent it. So you're safe. It's just that simple.
But is that, the 1%, is that how you think about it, Dylan?
That's in part. I completely agree that when you're learning, like you need to learn about this. Like if I was talking to, let's say I was talking to someone who had, $1,000 in their bank account, and I was talking to someone who had $1 million or $1 billion in their bank account, and they want to learn about Bitcoin. And they're like, well, how much should I buy? What should I do? I would tell each of them basically the same thing. You need to understand it. You need to understand what a wallet is, what a private key is, what Bitcoin is, what's the importance of 21 million coins, what the halving schedule is, what does that indicate? All these things. You need to know how to send, buy it on different platforms. You need to know how to send it and receive it. You need to know how to protect it and store it. And that only takes, maybe a couple $100 max just to do that, buy all the right wallets. I mean, our wallet was it like $45 there, buy one of those, and then buy $10-20 worth of Bitcoin and send it around, play around with it, get comfortable with it before you even think about putting any material amount of your wealth in there. Because if you put a bunch of money in it, and Patrick's heard these horror stories, I've heard these horror stories, people put their money in because a friend tells them, or their nephew tells them or whatnot, and they do it. And now they have a bunch of money in something they don't understand. They don't know how to use. They don't know how to access. And too many people have lost substantial amount, life-changing money because they didn't know what to do. And so I think the most important thing is understand it. And once you understand it, then you can up your allocation, right? Once you're confident and comfortable and you can make a convicted decision, then you can up that allocation from 1% to 3%. Maybe it's 5% right now. And then, maybe in the future, it becomes 10 to 20 or more. I know.
But what if they lose their 1%?
If they lose, they'll be fine.
It's just 1%.
I mean, so the question you're asking here, right? And we got to make a big differentiation. When we start talking crypto, I want to back up a sec and say Bitcoin is very different than every other coin out there. It's like trying to tell people that Bitcoin is gold. Well, Bitcoin's not really gold either. Gold is something very different. It's got different properties. Bitcoin is also one of its own kind, but everything else is not Bitcoin. There's nothing else like Bitcoin. So for me, the way I like to do it, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. See the sign? I love Bitcoin. I used to mine Bitcoin. I used to support the Bitcoin network. And for me, the whole idea about this is when we're storing our wealth, right? We're not playing the get rich quick scheme. And that's what a lot of people want to do. And that's what they're trying to sell you when you're watching sports and the Matt Damons that are out there sponsoring FTX. And this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it sexy and trying to make it seem like everyone's going to win money and Shiba. This is the problem, right? The problem is the root of its core is it's the love of money is the root of all evil. And they prey on that. And they try to get you to get into these other tokens. But the reality is, if you stick with Bitcoin and dollar cost averaging Bitcoin over time, I can show you analytically that over a 4-year period, Bitcoin has never lost over any asset in time in history, has outperformed Bitcoin. So the reality is, having Bitcoin as part of your portfolio is probably a wise call for everybody to have. And I'll say that unequivocally. Just like I would say unequivocally, if you don't own silver and you don't own gold and you don't understand the need for the precious metals that we use in our everyday life, you're also missing the opportunity, right? So there are things that I would say you got to remember, though, that I'm not advocating that anything other than Bitcoin right now is something that a beginner should get into. What you're learning is how to store and preserve your wealth. And the way to do that's not on an exchange and not on Coinbase. Hold your own private keys, just like you'd hold the silver that you get from Miles and Franklin.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and we spend a lot of time going over that, Chris, and we're more than happy to come out to your audience and explain all this stuff. But we want everybody to understand that, I remember back 5-6 years ago when Anthony Pompliano, commonly known as Pomp, used to be on CNBC, and he'd say, like, put 1% in. You get that basic, just 1% in. And that was before Bitcoin was on CNBC all over every day. And then as it started performing and outperforming everything else in the category, and they started to learn more about the asset class, that percentage kept going from 1 to 5 to 10 and so on. It got more and more mainstream. But the bottom line is, once you learn what this asset is about, and you learn that it's the only asset that we know exactly how much there's ever going to be of it. You can find more gold, you can find more silver, oil, gas, all these other commodities, you can find more. And that's where we get the inflation rates that 2% everybody targets comes from gold and silver, and the rate has normally been found. You can't do that. You can't dig a hole in the earth and find more Bitcoin. We know how much the computers are going to generate over time. So you get something like this, you learn how to store it safely. You get this, you buy Bitcoin, you put it on this, throw it in your safe, and you're done. Now you own Bitcoin, and it's protected. And it's as simple as that. Now you're in the category. It's like owning the top line product in the entire asset category, like owning Kleenex versus just owning all tissues, or Xerox instead of a copier. Bitcoin is the top asset in the entire class of crypto. And now you have exposure to something that's grown at something twice. It's grown, I think it's twice the rate of the internet in its first 10 years. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of conversations we can have about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and the differences between Bitcoin and blockchain, because they're not the same. Bitcoin is the first killer app on blockchain, but blockchain is the tech. Blockchain is like writing stuff down on a ledger that's written all over the globe, so you can't change it. So now it's like proof. So you can use that for your digital ID, your records of any kind for real estate transactions, your personal medical records, your resume, all that stuff can be put on a blockchain. But it's not just for currency. The currency application, the killer app using the blockchain, is Bitcoin. So we try to make it as simple as for people to understand and get exposure to it with minimal risk, like they don't need to know a ton. Like, you know where to get Bitcoin. In fact, you could buy a wallet from us and we can send you Bitcoin and for a nominal premium, and then you can throw it in your safe and you're done. You've got Bitcoin. So it's simple as that, because you got to know who to trust in these areas. And because there's a lot of people that are just pumping and dumping these other like 18,000 coins that are out there. That's not what we're about. We're trying to help you. How do you preserve your wealth, and how do you store it properly? That's why we recommend a digital form of gold. And that's often what we share. Let me share this one slide. I won't go into this eye chart, but this is typical what we do when we talk at our venues. We have a chart here that compares Bitcoin to gold to fiat currency and all the different properties of money, and how Bitcoin beats everything except in gold in almost every category except for history and durability, because the internet could go down. But every category has its flaws. You can move Bitcoin much easier and safer and quicker than you can for gold, for example. So these are the kind of conversations that we have. And I understand the arguments that a lot of precious metals people have, that it's not tangible, but you can have this in your safe and you got Bitcoin on it. And you can look it up and see how much you have. So there's arguments and counter arguments, but there's no one right answer to preserving your wealth. So the best way, just like everybody talks about, diversify across a couple different asset categories and make sure they're the ones you want to hold, because you could be holding them for a while until one pops and you sell that for a profit and buy some of the other ones.
And it's all about risk tolerance too. Like, I have a much higher risk tolerance for crypto than most people do, because I think I have a better handle on it based on my history. I've been doing it for so long that for me, cashing out Bitcoin at 60,000 was kind of a no-brainer. And you're right. It's like, what do you get into when you want to cash out? Do I want to hold dollars? No, but I'm not stupid either. I know there's going to be another time for me to enter into crypto. It might have gone up to 70 or 80 and I might have missed the top, and that's okay. But the reality is I got out and started getting into silver, where I met Chris and Economic Ninja and Jack at the Silver Symposium. It was just a wonderful time.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the category, and it's good to get exposure and learn about them. But I understand that there's hesitancy because it's new. It's a new technology. You need to know who to trust and how to understand it. But I've seen many videos that I've seen them made all over YouTube, like take $1,000 and put 100 in Bitcoin, 50 in Ethereum, and then 8 in these other random coins. I tell people, I made the same kind of video. I just said, take Bitcoin, take your $1,000, slice it into 4 or 5 even numbers, like $200, $250, and dollar cost average into Bitcoin for 4 and 5 months. And that's your recipe while you learn. And at the end of that 4 or 5 months, you'll have an appetite to okay, how does this compare to Bitcoin? How does Ethereum compare to Bitcoin? What's the difference? How is Litecoin very similar to Bitcoin, but a little bit different? Those are the kind of things you learn over time, but you're not going to learn things overnight. So dip your toe in, get a little bit of Bitcoin, get some exposure, understand the benefits of it and also some of the detractions of it. And then you will eventually evolve, because I didn't wake up and knowing Bitcoin and blockchain. None of us knew this 15 years ago because it didn't exist.
I mean, in honor of Stacey, I'm going to even say XRP, because Stacey seems to be cool with that too. So I'm going to say, let's add XRP just for our ma'am Stacey and be like, hey, we added that too.
Here's what I want to do.
As you can tell, Chris, we could talk about this forever. We're more than happy to share with your community whenever you want.
That's what I want to do. I want to have you guys on, and we're going to do a crypto is crap, or is crypto crap, or you got scammed by Bitcoin. Sorry. We're going to get people in there, because I'm going to ask you all the hard questions. Like, what happens when the lights go off? EMP. Okay. Is it gone forever? All right.
No,
we'll cover that.
Nope.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree. If there's one computer running, it'll eventually generate the.
I'll tell you what, if that's what you want to do, then I'm going to make it even more fun. I'm going to sweeten it for your listeners here. So I've got silver that I'm going to send out to your audience. So here's what we're going to do. So Chris, you're going to get to pick 10 people from your subscribers from this episode that you launch. You get their addresses and I'll send them silver. It's just that simple. You pick out 10 people. The only requirement is they have to tag and follow your channel and ours. If you're just one of our economic preppers and you think you're going to win, guys, you're not, because if you're not following Chris, I'm not going to give it to you. It's just that simple. You got to be following both of us, and Chris is going to be picking the winners on his show. That's simple.
That's an interesting idea. I know my subscribers like silver, and I think I won't have any trouble getting rid of 10 of them. So, yeah, that'll be good. We'll do a crypto's crap. Here's 10 coins of silver. Somebody's getting it video.